Well, it's episode 210, and I think you know what that means. It's a fan-submitted MOCs episode. So, very simple, very easy. Here's a submission email. It's on your screen right now. It's in the description below. Copy-paste it, do whatever you need to do with it. Put it in an email, send me pictures, send me info, whatever you want. That's the way to do it. And then, hopefully, it'll appear in this fan-submitted episode, or just in general in future episodes of the Bionicle Inspiration series, a show where we showcase the MOCs of the Bionicle community in the hopes to inspire you so that you can build your own cool stuff and get some good old creative ideas along the way. But we've got a few fan-submitted MOCs today. I put out a call this time. I normally don't. Normally I just sort of use what I've got, but I was like, screw it. Let's get some calls in. So it's always good to stay tuned on my social media. I posted it on Facebook, Instagram, and in the Discord server as well. And I just said, kind of 24 hours ago, I was like, hey, I'm going to be recording soon, so get on it if you want to submit. And I had a whole bunch of people submit. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to cover everyone because I only had so many that I could cover. But, you know, they're still in the bank. Doesn't mean they won't come in future episodes. So by all means, stay tuned. But without further ado, hey, let's jump in. Let's start talking about some of these fan-submitted MOCs, shall we? The very first MOC we've got today is a fan-submitted MOC. It's by Joxon, and it is called Chrysalisk Ascendant. So this one's really freaky, really cool, really funky. The color scheme immediately grabs me here because it's kind of out there and different. Some really weird colors. It's got your older style purple, which I really like the old purple. It's just this very nice kind of vibrant color. I mean, the new purple's fantastic too, but hey, still good. I think that switch with purple was probably like in the, I want to say the 90s, but it's probably like early 2000s or something. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not sure. But still, both shades of purple I think are really solid. And I think are very complemented very well, by these two colors here of spring green and this sort of medium blue. Obviously a little bit of black as well, but yeah, all four of those colors I think is a really nice color combination. I think trying to use some of those more obscure colors, like spring green, which is sort of semi-obscure. It appears in a lot of more modern sets these days. It is a relatively new color, but it's such a nice color. I don't know. I've always found it very pretty. So just in general, I think that's a really nice color combo there, and really cool to see like 4 different colors being used. You know, most of the time people tend to stick to like kind of maybe 2 or 3 colors, but when you start to get to like 4, 5, 6, 7 or something like that, sometimes they can get a little too colorful. Depends how you do it, of course, but just really nice to see such a beautiful color combination here. Some other stuff that I think really, really shines with this MOC is the tentacles on the back, which are that purple that we spoke about. The fact that they are this beautiful, like kind of curvy, like S-shaped, almost sort of snake serpent-like, just in the kind of general kind of line style of them. I really like that. The fact that it's so like kind of squiggly and odd and different, it feels so alien. I don't know, it feels so just different and distinct. And I think that's kind of the point of this MOC. I mean, like when you look at it, the legs almost look sort of bug-like in the fact that they kind of sprawl out at the end and really thin out like sort of like blades of sorts. And the fact that the legs have this sort of more like jagged, spiky kind of texture, almost like that of a bug or something. And the rib cage looks almost more sort of like skeletal with the way that it sort of encloses itself inward like that. I like that a lot. There's something that just looks so alien and different about this. And I think that really works in the favor of this MOC because it could very well be a creature from outer space, or it could just be some sort of crazy weird alien species or some sort of mutant bug or hybrid thing. I don't know, but I think that's just really interesting to pay attention to, just like physically the sort of textures and general sort of style of this MOC. There's weird squiggly lines, very sort of sharp, slim edges that really sort of take it out of a more sort of traditional, realistic world and make it seem so much more different and other and odd and unique and quirky, which I really like. So that's certainly something to pay attention to, I think, for yourself when you're building, is just what sort of specific shapes or textures do you really want to play around with, and what can that then communicate? You know, if it is really sort of squiggly and odd, would that look very alien, or do you want them to be a little bit more sort of like rugged and bulky and strong, so you really play with them being quite large in stature, or you use pieces that have sort of more like harder edges to them, or just seem a bit more kind of like rugged and rough, and that could reflect a more sort of, you know, maybe like a boxer or someone who's just really focuses on combat, perhaps, you know? Something to think about, you know, little sort of subtle things like that I think go a really long way and make a MOC really stand out and really shine. So yeah, I think that's awesome. I think Joxon has done an absolute bang up job. So love your work. Let's move on to the next MOC now. This is by Luki Dookie, great name, and this is Kami. Or Kami, we'll say Kami. So what I like about this is there's a whole bunch of different system that's been used across this, and I always love a little bit of system on a Bionicle because I think it really opens up a lot of different creative possibilities. And so let's talk about some of those. Take a look at the waist specifically. You notice that on the sort of like top of the chest, or the base of the chest, but the top of the waist, there is a very small Hero Factory armor piece that's sort of inserted upside down. And then that appears to be attached to the lower part of the waist with a T-bar piece that's just sort of nicely inserted into that Hero Factory shell there. I think it's a really great way to get a little bit of posability. It should be able to spin, all the way around, and it should be able to kind of, tilt downwards and upwards as well. So I think it's just is a fairly decent design and a really nice way of just adding a little bit of waist articulation, because I don't know, I feel like that's sort of two different ways of building that a lot of people branch out with is, do I want to build more of a sort of statue, a sort of very static MOC that doesn't move? Or do I want to build something that's, essentially like a modern action figure that has 86 billion points of articulation? You can move its left butt cheek if you really want, Something like that. And I think obviously that just depends on people's interest or desire or whatever. And hey, maybe you always build superposable stuff, but you're like, yeah, screw it. This time I'm just going to build something that's a little more static. It can vary, of course. But I just find it really interesting to pay attention to that sort of stuff in MOCs of just like, okay, that's how they did the articulation in this specific part of the body, because maybe I can, take that into what I'm doing in the future. Or heck, I myself, I collect action figures. I also just enjoy looking at action figures. And that's also something I always look at is I go like, oh, okay, that's how they did like toe articulation on this specific character. Or I've seen some weird action figures recently where it's like you can flex their muscles on their arms and it actually like kind of bulks up as it flexes, which I think is really interesting. And so it's stuff like that where you go like, okay, well, if they can do that on this action figure, why can't I then do that on a Bionicle, So something to consider, like study some action figures, even if you just look up some like reviews on YouTube or just Google cool action figures or something, or go to the shops and see what they do, or buy some, whatever, or look at the ones in your collection, whatever. See if anything if there is anything you can learn from them that you could then apply to a MOC like that you might be building, So that in general, really cool waist articulation there, really like that. I also quite enjoy, just in general, there's a few other little system details kind of around the pecs on this MOC there. Just little subtle stuff that I think goes a long way. Little fun greebles like that I always think can really complete a MOC. I also really enjoy the subtle inclusions of teal. Of course, this Kakama mask here is teal, and there's a little bit of teal also on the arms, which is just a couple little system pieces. And that's it. That's really it. This MOC is mainly just that sort of black and the different greys there. But I love that. I love the inclusion of being able to use teal, which is such a beautiful color, and depending can be a little bit more rare. There's a few Bionicle pieces in teal, not a lot. Of course, teal is certainly coming back into popularity now in the modern age of Lego that we're currently living in. And I love the idea here of, okay, I've got this cool teal mask. Don't really have many other teal pieces. Nothing wrong with just putting a couple little subtle bits of teal with the pieces you have in areas of the MOC. And you've put teal in. It may not be as prominent, but you've still got that cool color in there. And that could be the same with some other really obscure color you have. You might be like, I've got some sand red that I can play with, or I've got sand purple, or I just have real sand that I'm going to put on my MOC. Don't do that. And you're like, I'm going to just find a little small way that I can put it in. It doesn't have to be as prominent. It can still look really good like we see here. So something to consider. You can just put little sprinkles in. I think it works well. But overall, I love some of the poses that this MOC is in as well, and overall I think the design is just really cool and really stands out, really works. So nice work, looky dookie. Let's move over to the next MOC. Now, I'm not going to show you the image because there's a fun reveal with this one. This is by the Lego Teen, and it is called, it is his self MOC. He didn't give it a name. So essentially in the email, he said that this MOC was inspired by his sig fig. So for those of you who maybe don't know, a sig fig is you essentially building yourself as a minifigure. Your like signature figure. It's you. It's a representation of you. It can be literal or it can be a sort of like mascot style. Like it's I don't actually have a robot face, but why not? I'm going to make myself this robot. But it's kind of just like, this is me as a minifigure, and you can put it in posts that you make, or you can just have it in your city, and it's like, hey, that's me. Like whatever. So he said this was inspired by his sig fig. So here is the sig fig. Here is the actual MOC. So I love the idea that in the post, or the email, he was like, yeah, so this was inspired, by my sig fig. You can see the similarities. I'm like, yeah, a similar jacket. He's got some jeans and stuff, and a dinosaur head. I clearly saw that on the on the original minifigure. I say that as a joke, but I actually adore that. I love the idea that it's like, yes, this is me. I'm a lizard man. And it's great. It's quirky, it's different, it's weird, and I actually get a bit of insight into his personality, which I think is a really great way to approach a self-mock. You can build a self-mock and it just be like, I thought they were cool. It's my self-mock. Of course, for those of you who maybe don't know, a self-mock is essentially very similar to a sig fig. It's sort of an interpretation of you as a Bionicle character, whether it's literal or whether it's a bit more metaphorical or it's more symbolic, or it's you just being like, I really like this character. This is sort of my like signature character. It's me. It's my self-mock, I've done a bunch of episodes on self-mocks in the past. I go into way more detail about it in some of the really early episodes of Biss. If you want to learn a bit more about self-mocks, maybe check those out. Or check out some of the behind the build videos I did about LEGO terminology, because I go in quite a bit of detail there as well. But that's a little quick rundown for now. But yeah, I love that. I get a bit of an insight into this guy's personality just looking at this. I'm like, oh yeah, he's probably a little bit like quirky and fun and silly, which is great qualities to have. So I love that. Big old Indominus Rex head on the top there as his head. Brilliant. Hilarious. Very fun. I also quite enjoy just some of the color blocking on this. You can really see like, oh yeah, he's wearing some jeans. They've got maybe like a nice pattern to them or some like knee pads maybe. He's got his shoes. They're a different color in that sense. It's very, it's blocked out in the areas there. And he's clearly wearing a, like some sort of jacket that he's got over there, a little sleeveless jacket. And, he's got that sort of lime and silver shirt that goes over the on his body. That's where a shirt goes. It works really well. It looks really cool. You can really see that it's all clothing. It makes sense because he's really blocked out those colors into the set areas that would make sense when you look at, people wearing normal clothes. So it's really cool. So yeah, I just thought this was a little sort of small fun one. Really cool. Let's move on to the next mock. It's by Alpha Wolf 325, and this is Stormgarde Iron Hoverbike. So let me get the email up here. He said that this was based off. Oh, he said this was built for a contest specifically, but he said that the vehicle specifically was a rendition of his favorite vehicle from Heroes of the Storm, the Stormgarde Iron Kite. Is what he said. I'm not familiar with that source material, but hey. That's cool. That's what it looks like. And, this is the LEGO version of it. So I think, it's a pretty decent translation of the source material here. I think it's been done quite well. But I think he's also taken a little bit of creative liberty with it, which, by all means, of course he can, Whether you want to build a one-to-one replica, of course you can. Or you could just be like, I'm just taking kind of beats from this, and I'm going to just sort of make it my own. Because, honestly, in my opinion, I think that's more fun. I have a mock that I've photographed. I haven't posted it yet. I've got to edit the photos, but I made Jabba the Hutt's palace in Lego. And when you look at some of the earlier set pieces from Star Wars originally, they're actually quite sparse because they're populated with a lot of characters. And when you look at it on film, you're like, oh yeah, this is a really sort of like lively, dense like space. But when you take all the characters out, it's actually pretty minimal. There's not a lot of like detail. There's not as much going on. And so when I built it myself, I was like, man, this is actually really sparse. And I was like, I'm going to add some of my own personal touches to this because otherwise, it's kind of boring, So there's no reason to do that if you are building a replica of something or you're reimagining something in that sense. By all means, add your own little personal touches because sometimes it's really fun. But also, sometimes it's really fun to really dive into something that is super detailed and realistic and filled with all sorts of stuff that you can capture and really just sort of sink your teeth into that because that can be just as fun. So it depends on your source material as well. But, this is really cool. Some little points of note on this. I love the engines. I like the fact that they do, in fact, move as well. The bulk of those engines appear to be made out of various different tire pieces. And hey, I mean, that's a great thing to do. I'm sure you're like me. Let me pull out my tire drawer here, which you probably could hear that. Yeah, let's hope so. I'm not going to put it too close to the mic because I'd hate to, make it peak or whatever. I have a massive drawer filled with tires. I don't really build cars, so, I don't know when I'll use them. But something like this with a Bionicle, a lot easier to use, isn't it? Because they have that natural kind of rounded shape to them. They look like that of an engine or maybe the barrel of a gun, or you can actually use the rubber part of the tire for, filling in little cracks and details on Bionicles and adding some nice little touches, So, yeah, play around with your tires. They work perfectly for like engines or parts of a vehicle like this. It's a great idea. I also like the fact that he's used some tan pieces specifically on the front there that appear to be from the Thornatus V9, one of my favorite Bionicle vehicles. And I think that's also a great idea. why not buy some of those older Bionicle vehicles, whether you go on eBay and get them, or you have some in your collection currently, or maybe you want to buy like a new Technic set at the shops that would have some pretty decent pieces you could play around with for a vehicle if you want to build something like that. And essentially just repurpose it, There's nothing wrong with doing that. Just grabbing those pieces and just exclusively using those, or maybe introducing a few others and seeing what you can make with them. Because, hey, if it worked once on a vehicle, surely it'll work again repurposed into your own custom vehicle. Something to think about, Additionally, I like the idea of just building a speeder. I think it makes a lot of sense because, sure, if you want to build a massive car or this horse and chariot or something for your Bionicle characters, that might be pretty parts intensive if you want to keep it in scale. But just to build a speeder like this, I don't know, I feel like it still uses a good amount of pieces, but not a huge amount, It's kind of that nice little middle point with scale where you can build it relatively small, but, it not necessarily break the bank on pieces or be just massive in scale that it's just going to be this colossal project that's going to take you ages or something. So, I don't know, definitely recommend doing something like that. A motorbike, a speeder bike, some sort of sci-fi little one-person vehicle like that. Could be quite easy to make something like that. So, it's certainly something to consider. I think this is a great example of that and really well done. Onto the actual dude who's writing this now. I like that both the speeder and this guy have this kind of more distilled color scheme, just the sort of like rusty silvers and the actual like dark orange Pahatu style colors as well. There's something about it that almost feels sort of like slightly post-apocalyptic to me, like even the shoulders kind of using those fin pieces, how there's that little bit of red on it. It kind of looks like a sort of more like ragtag thrown together armor, which I don't know if that's a deliberate choice or not, but I really like that. And I like the mental image of this being almost sort of like Mad Maxy as he rides along on this cool looking speeder bike thing here. I don't know, just lives out his days in the apocalypse. It's cool. I like that. I think it's fitting. Just a nice way of just sort of taking note on this color scheme and what it communicates, I suppose. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. So, nice work. Let's move on to the next mock. It's by Elf Melter, and this is JJ the Musician. So I think this one's really fun. I think these instruments are very well designed. Again, using some different tire pieces there to form the drum, and some different sort of like jet engine pieces as well. They look like a drum. It's really cool. Even his guitar, I think, is really well designed, using a few more system pieces, and the drumsticks as well, using just like axles and little system cones and things there. Really cool. Really, really cool. I love that. You can instantly tell what they are, and I think that's certainly a sign that you're doing well if something's just instantly recognizable like that. So, something to consider. But overall, I think there's a lot of character behind this guy. I love his goofy head design, using those headlight brick pieces and some of those dots, interesting kind of curved tile pieces like that actually look a little bit more like teeth. Gives him this sort of very just sort of clever and fun facial expression. And he has a fez using a bucket piece and a minifigure hand. Awesome. A musician with a fez, fantastic. Again, we see some really nice clothing designs here. We saw some clothing before, see some more here. It really looks like he has shorts on because the red is just being blocked out there specifically on the upper legs. And his really awesome kind of like jacket coat thing. It's primarily using system pieces there, and just sort of wraps around the edges there very nicely. A little bit more kind of minimal, but it really does look like that of someone who would be in a band. And I know it's very instantly recognizable. You can kind of instantly translate that to what you would see on some sort of little jacket vest thing that someone would be wearing. So it's nice. It's really cool. And again, just a really great way of blocking out those colors so you can instantly see like, okay, the red's his clothing, the gray is his sort of robotic body and stuff. It's awesome. I love the fact too that this guy has multiple arms. Because sure, it's fun to just be like, yeah, sure, I'm going to give my mock multiple arms because it looks really cool, doesn't it? But I love the fact that it has some like justification for this unique character. Like he's playing in a band, and so he uses his multiple arms so that he can play even more instruments and essentially be like a one-man band, So yeah, I think that's really fun. If you're building a character that has a unique concept, like he's a musician, or maybe he's like a fighter pilot, or he's an artist or something. Can you do something fun like that? Can you give them multiple arms because that would work with their profession? Or could you give them really enhanced legs because they're a runner or something? Like, have a bit of a think about that. Can you really accentuate certain parts of their body to really sort of fit with the idea or the story that you have with them? Certainly something to consider, and I think this is a great example of just how like creative and fun that can be on a mock. So there you go, a little bit of food for thought. Let's move over to the next mock. It's by Tom Reason, and this is Makuta Teridax, Summoner of Shadows. So there's a really awesome, like, almost sort of like Taraga Doom style Teridax mock here of him. He looks sinister, he looks evil, and he looks pretty cool, I think. I quite enjoy, again, some more beautiful usage of system to create beautiful kind of clothing and cloth elements. Really nice looking kind of, very like Bionicle movie, Mask of Light, or Legends of Metru Nui style, like Taraga robes like that, make him look more sort of regal and noble, and almost sort of like monk-like, perhaps. And also kind of sinister, too. The red on the black there really pops, really looks very Makuta-y. It is worth noting, though, that in the email on this mock, Tom said that he was inspired by Krex Productions. He said that he built the body on this mock specifically, and then he sort of adapted it himself. He really liked the design, then he made this really awesome Makuta mock, and I like that idea. I really do like that idea. You know, just sharing what other people have made and adapting it yourself. Of course, crediting them for what you made. But yeah, just, you know, I like that. Why not? Let's see what I can do with it. You know, can I adapt it in a unique way? And, you know, being on the receiving end of that sometimes when people are like, hey, I was really inspired by what you made and I want to see how I can do it myself. And then, you know, sending them a message and just being like, hey, thanks for that. That was really cool. Like, just a really nice sense of community. It's really fun, and it's really kind of gratifying when someone does that. So there's no reason you can't do the same. But of course, you know, credit them. But yeah, great to see him do it in such a unique and fun way. Additionally, too, I love the staff design that he's made here for this Makuta mock. The really nice inclusion of some like little dish pieces and that sort of like old kind of like sconce piece there, and the little crystal on the top there. I don't know, it's just a really nice little subtle details that really make that staff pop, really take it into another direction. Instead of just making it just some sort of ordinary like axle that he's holding or something, he's made it look more ornate, more kind of royal and regal. And it really fits Makuta. So I like that. Really, really little small thing that goes a long way. It's awesome. Really, really cool. We got another mock now by Endertoa, and this is called Sparky the Slizer. So, of course, the title here says that this is a Slizer. And, of course, there is a specific LEGO theme about Slizers. And looking at it, it doesn't necessarily look much like a Slizer. But to some degree, I kind of go like, yeah, I don't really think that's a big deal. You know, there's some people who build almost like 100% system mock, then say, oh, yeah, it's a Bionicle, this is a Tahu or whatever. And, like, you know, sometimes people go like, well, actually, it isn't because it needs Bionicle pieces to be a Bionicle. But, like, you know, I don't know. Hey, if you're building a Bionicle character and you're just giving them this specific unique look, I guess it's still a Bionicle, isn't it? I don't know. I feel like it's just, you know, you're being nitpicky at that point to a degree. But hey, why not with this too? It's like, yeah, sure, it doesn't look exactly like a Slizer, but sure, it is a Slizer. In my world, in my books, through my imagination, it is a Slizer. That's what I'm going with. So, you know what? If you want to do that, why not? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And that's a great way to look at it. It's like, you don't have to necessarily limit yourself to specific boxes or like, oh, it has to have this to be a Slizer or to be a Bionicle or to be a hero from Hero Factory, whatever. You just do what makes your heart content. And if you want to say that they're a pineapple, but they're actually a vegetable known as a broccoli or something, I don't know, then you know what? You go with that. Weird analogy, but, you know, hey, it still relates. Anyway, so this cool Slizer here, I like the fact that it has what I assume is a custom mask, unless there's been some tricky, like, Photoshop editing here, which has been done decently well if it is. But yeah, that is a blue breeze mask, which I assume, well, it does not exist, but it could be a painted piece, it could be a sort of custom one, or it could be some sort of bootleg piece or something. It could be a variety of different things. But hey, you know what? It looks cool. Looks really cool. And I just like seeing masks in different colors that they don't exist in, because it reminds me of the old days where they had the mask packs with Bionicle masks, and you could get masks in just a variety of different colors. I think it's really nice. You know, it's just nice to see them in unique color schemes that you can really kind of play around with there, and really kind of personalize your masks, give them you know, unique masks and unique colors. So hey, you know what? Buy some bootleg masks. Why not? It could be a really fun way to play around. I also quite like the shoulder design on this guy here. These really broad, sort of like pointy shoulders, for lack of a better term. Just the way those Technic panel pieces sort of flare out on the sides like that. I think it just looks really cool, really snazzy. I also like the hand design on this one here. Only got 3 fingers, but there's nothing wrong with that. You know, 3 fingers can still get the job done. And I like the fact that, you know, proportion-wise, they're quite large. It's very similar to like Axon from Bionicle there. But so what? This is a Slizer that's not necessarily got any specific Slizer-like details to it. So, if you want to give them big, not technically in proportion hands, yeah, why not? Do it. Sure, who cares? They've also got weird bendy legs, so you know what? Do what you want, And I think it's a really solid, good hand design that has a lot of posability to it, and it's fairly easy to make yourself. So, why not? Why not? This is just a good mock in that regard of breaking some of the rules, but still being really solid and really, really cool. So, really love your work here, good sir. Let us move on now to the next mock. This mock is by... This is the last mock. It's by Cameron, and it's called Tahu Mata Revised. So I'll quickly read the description here. Cameron said, he whipped up this little thing, which was... The main idea that he wanted for it was to make Tahu kind of like all adapted by purely technology instead of the more sort of like biomechanical focus, which Bionicle normally has. I like that idea. Just the concept of... It's quite similar to the round one of the Bio Cup, isn't it? The idea of, hey, this is a Bionicle and I'm completely reimagining it in a new context. This is a weird, totally different looking Tahu that doesn't even have Tahu's original head. It has this weird, neon line thing and this, black tubing as its head design. And it still kind of works. Still looks really cool. Still looks really different and unique. I love this idea. There's no reason you couldn't do a similar concept like this with many other characters of what would they look like from an alternate universe where they're like almost unrecognizable as their original self, but maybe they have little subtle things that are little callbacks are very similar to the original, which you see here, like, Tahu having his sort of one hand like he did as the Tahu Mata character, and the flame sword as well, which of course is very iconic for Tahu Mata and just kind of Tahu in general to a degree. But yeah, I love this. I love the idea that the legs are these sort of very spiddly, thin, sort of like sharper design with the digitigrade. There, I said it, good sir. Design that is, I don't know, quite different, quite. It's not very Tahu-y, you know what I mean? Like Tahu normally has a very typical sort of, I don't know, normal humanoid leg design. But the fact that this is more spiddly and quite different in shape to the sort of more stockier, larger top of the body there, just makes it look so much more alien and different. And I really like that about this mock. I love the idea of taking very iconic, well-known Bionicle characters, or even just characters from pop culture as well, and seeing how you can just distort them and make them super weird and different. It's very similar to a lot of Marvel stuff where you dip into the multiverse and it's like, this is Iron Man, but he has blue armor instead. Or this is, Captain America, but he's actually a Hydra agent. And you know what? He has octopus hands because Hydra, blah, I made that one up. But, it's whatever it is, like what kind of crazy, weird, fun stuff can you do that's just this really different, unique take on it that still is really interesting and really unique and really cool, Yeah, so may as well look into a bit of Marvel for a bit of inspiration for that, if you so please. But... hopefully you enjoyed this episode. That's all for this Fan Submitted Mocks episode for now. Of course, episode 220 will be the next Fan Submitted Mocks episode. Every 10th episode is a Fan Submitted Mock episode. But that doesn't mean that I don't include Fan Submitted Mocks into regular episodes as well. So by all means, continue to submit your mocks. And don't be afraid or don't be disappointed if you didn't get featured in this one, because there's no reason you can't be in the next one or the next one or the next one. So stay tuned. I already told you how to submit at the start of the episode, so go back to that if you forgot. Like I said, check my social media. There's links in the description to that. And check the links in the description below as well for the social media of all the builders that you saw today. Sometimes with submitted mocks, people don't give their social media or they just straight up don't have it. So sometimes there are no links to some of those people, but there are some. So check them out. And by all means, see the other stuff these people have built. Give them a follow. Give them a like because they deserve it. They're good builders. And you should, spread the love. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now. Happy building.